So, I personally would like to share why I joined a men's group and why I believe that every man, specifically if you have issues around suppressing your emotions, communicating, or blowing up when things don't necessarily go your way, should join a men's group. So, it was 2018, and I found myself in an interesting place or position. I had previously invested in different life coaches and marketing and business coaches since I had been in my, at that point, 3 year, technically 2 year entrepreneurial journey. And I recognized there was this pattern of certain things that continuously kept showing up for me. And one, it was this inability to express my emotions whenever I felt hurt or sad. Two, there was this piece of not only suppressing my emotions, but allowing them to continue to build and to fester over time, which ultimately would end up in me maybe blowing up or just having these I would say episodes where I would be where anger would just be channeled almost in a very chaotic fashion. And two, my partner provided a beautiful mirror for me on what was really disturbing my peace and how I wasn't showing up from a place of authenticity. And what I mean from that is anytime these emotions would come up, and in my case, more times than not, it would be the emotions of sadness. I would instantly go into blaming the other person as if it was their fault for the emotion that I was feeling. So then I would not only blame the other person, but then I would distance myself from them. So how this showed up within my relationship was, you know, let's say we're having a conversation and something is triggered um, within that conversation, I would become hurt. And if I became hurt, I would withdraw. And by withdraw, I mean I would go on these patterns of just completely muting myself and not communicating, sometimes for days. I mean, a multitude of days. I can remember events where I would go 4 or 5 days holding on to a certain emotion and not even feeling like I was able to express myself. I would literally feel numb. And I didn't have an awareness of that being a case within my life because I've always felt I've been a pretty good communicator. Um, but it kept showing up time after time after time. It showed up more specifically within my relationship. But then I also noticed that there were certain aspects of this showing up within my family. It was showing up within my business. And I had reached this point where I knew that I needed some help and I wanted to try something different. What really dawned on me was even with the coaches at the time who I had previously worked with, um, I came to them maybe to essentially let's say solve a certain problem that I was experiencing with my business, receiving mentorship and guidance. And then I noticed that I would instantly blame them for all of the aspects that may or may not have really occurred that I desired within my business. I would accuse or say, well, if they would do this, then things would be different. Well, if things would have went this way, then things would be different. And ultimately, what was coming from that was this sense of me blaming everyone except taking full responsibility for myself. And on an even deeper level than that, I noticed that my depth meaning sometimes when I would communicate how it was that I felt, and more times than not, it wasn't, in the moment. This took periods of time to get to that point. Um, they weren't necessarily able to meet me where I was at. So it was, what I found was that there was this kind of um, surface level, it's probably the best way to say it. When there is something that is underneath the surface that needs to be seen, needs to be felt, needs to be expressed, and it's suppressed, then that in itself affects everything else that appears on the surface. So while I was trying to receive support and help on issues that I thought was the problem, whether it be exposure or marketability or clarifying my messaging in these particular aspects within my business, what was really the issue was something that was deeper, that these particular coaches, that wasn't in their realm or in their field of being able to really take me to that particular place. So I ended up coming across a men's group, and it was something that I knew at the time it felt right, even though there was a bit of anxiety, a bit of kind of, is this going to be something else that I'm going to invest in where, you know, I feel maybe let down or feel upset based off of the result. So what I ended up doing was I chose to go into it more with a sense of openness rather than the sense of attachment to a certain outcome. I didn't go into it with this from a place of, you know, I need to be healed or cured of something. I went into it from the thought process and the mindset of, this is something that I desire to be a part of. This is something that I recognize could be very useful for my growth. And from that place, I'm going to go into this just being open and allowing the experience to bring up for me whatever it needs to be bring up, and for me to create the awareness of being gentle with myself and allowing myself to be uncomfortable. And what ended up happening during this period, I noticed within the first week, something came up for me around my relationship with other men and how I actually feared, I didn't feel safe around men. And it was weird to me because, I had friends and other relationships of, with men, um, in my circle, but I noticed within this kind of new dynamic, I didn't know anyone that was there, and there was a certain level of depth and vulnerability that I had never really been a part of in my entire life to that point. And during that period of time, I shared certain aspects that I had never told anyone in my entire life. You know, I cried in front of other men. I shared certain struggles that were going on within my life, within my business, within my relationship at the time, within, um, just what I was perceiving where I was at within life. And prior to joining that particular group, about, the year before, my mother had passed away, and I was someone who was, um, one of the primary responsibilities of making sure that, the funeral and dealing with doctors and the hospital and all these different things. And during that particular period of time, there was a deep necessity, a deep need for me to be on. You know, um, there were different aspects within the hospital and just certain conversations and things that needed to go on, which I'm not going to explain in this video. But there was a deep aspect where I needed to show up and be strong, not only for my mother, who was towards her end of life at the time, but also my sister, my my brother, my aunt, other relatives who were also processing what was um, in the realm of what was about to occur, and that again was the passing of my mother. And I truly do believe that her passing, if it wasn't for her passing, um, then I don't know if I ever, probably, to be honest, would have gotten to that point where I could see that something was off in my ability to really communicate my emotions, and in my ability to um, see on a deeper level that there was something that was needed within my life, needed for me to see, that really I didn't have the awareness of at that point. So within that particular experience, um, I've done a lot of you know trainings, workshops. I've worked with different coaches. I've always, I've had this belief in self investment. You know, it's kind of taken on different layers as it started with books. Reading books, a lot of personal health and growth and development books, which I still do read today. But that started to graduate into looking into more one-on-one support, looking into different aspects around therapy, authentic relating, group work. But within all these particular pieces, I had never at that point landed into a men's group. And the reason why I believe that men's work and is something that everybody should experience on some level or some shape is a lot of us men have grown up with models of other men, whether it be our fathers or maybe uncles or people within our sphere, who maybe have not shown a very effective ability for themselves in communicating and conveying and being with their own emotions. There's this, can be this societal pressure of being strong, of being stoic, of wearing a certain face. Like everything is always all cool, everything is good. If you show any type of vulnerability, or if you are in a place where you um, do put yourself out there, there can be the fear of being taken advantage of, or also being looked upon as weak. And in my experience, my own personal experience, I know many men struggle with this. You know, I know that it can feel very unsafe to be seen and to be heard and to go a bit deeper than looking at the external, looking at other people, blaming our, where we see ourselves, blaming certain emotions on other people. Sometimes when we flash that light bulb against ourselves, it can bring up some areas that we may not in the moment feel that proud of. But that is where the growth is. That's how we evolve, by shining light onto the darkness. And if you're a man and you're watching this and you just feel like, man, like you can relate, you can resonate with what I'm saying, and it's not anything that you've ever done, or you haven't necessarily received support in that particular realm, I invite you to just create some space for yourself and look into what support is it that you desire. Because whether it be a coach, a mentor, a counselor, a therapist, a spiritual mentor, whoever that may be, the more and more we're holding on to different aspects, emotions, the more and more we suppress these things and we don't have outlets or tools to really be with them and to really connect deeper within ourselves, then the more we just will project whatever those emotions are in our experience of who it is that we're coming into contact with. Excuse me. And the more and more we project, and the more and more we continue to do that, the more and more we can sabotage relationships, sabotage friendships, sabotage intimate relationships, sabotage business partnerships. And it can come from an unconscious awareness. And if it's coming from an unconscious awareness, and that means to an extent we're not aware of it. But when we have a conscious awareness of something's off, I could use more help. I could do a better job of communicating my emotions, of being with my emotions, of allowing certain emotions to be felt on a bodily sensation level, then it gives us this power and this opportunity to create a new pattern, to create a new behavior, to create a new routine that expands us. It creates the opportunity for us to shift not only within ourselves, but every relationship, every dynamic on a communicative level to shift inside of our lives. And to just put a button on top, we live in a time in this world where, you know, there's enough information that's out there. You know, there's different art, there's different authors. Um, One of my favorites who has written on this topic is Brene Brown, around vulnerability. One of the most popular TED talks. There's tons of books and different things out there, and sometimes we can become over inundated with just taking in more and more and more information. Where the real growth, the real healing, and the real transformation is when we actually slow down and we focus on the being that's underneath that, the information, and allow ourselves and our minds to expand, allow our bodies to perceive things differently, allow our communication to be more gentle, to be more loving. And from these places, that's when we can truly evolve. That's when we can truly create new boundaries within all of our relationships. That is where we have such a beautiful opportunity to experience and evolve in the growth within ourselves. And then we can actually shine a light and pass that growth onto others within our families, within our business partnerships, and within our intimate relationships. So if this is reaching you at a time, again, where this resonates, this lands, I invite you to look at receiving support, to set the intention, open your mind, open your heart, and I'm sure that whatever it is that you're desiring will indeed show up for you. Much love to you.